whenever you are,
All right,
Tony.
thank you.
So take it away.
Appreciate it.
All right,
I wasn't here to hear the introduction, so I don't know how badly you introduced me.
She didn't. She just said his name.
Okay.
I'm going to let
So-
you do all that other stuff.
All that other stuff.
You tell
I
them
will.
more, yeah.
I will.
What
That's
you want
fine.
us to hear?
Yeah. I'm here at the invitation from Juanita, but I understood that it was because some of the residents here had asked for this kind of information. Just a little bit about myself before I talk to you about what I'm here to talk about today. I am the prosecuting attorney here in Clinton County, as Juanita said. My name is Tony Sommer. I have kind of a career that's always been in the law enforcement area. I grew up here in Clinton County from the time I was 9 years old, north of Frankfort, a few miles, and went to Rossville High School. Graduated from there in the way back, went on to Purdue University for undergraduate school. Out of undergraduate school, I went to the State Police Department as my first employer. I worked with the State Police Department for 20 years. During that time, I was a patrol officer for them. I was then a detective for them. And then I served the department as a lawyer after, as a patrol officer, I'd gone back to law school and completed it while I was a detective. I completed a law degree and was licensed to practice law in the state of Indiana. But initially, for the first 13 years of my career as a lawyer, I stayed and did that with the Indiana State Police Department. And I worked for them out of their headquarters offices down in Indianapolis for that 13 years. Retired from them when I was elected to serve as the prosecutor here in Clinton County. So my focus has always been on the law enforcement side of legal questions, I guess is the way I'd put it. And so I have some exposure to those things. So today, what they asked me to come and talk to you guys about are scams against the elderly. And we see them. We see scams. And being older myself at this point, when I think of scams against the elderly, I think of myself included. Maybe that's unfair. I don't know. Maybe I'm not that old yet. Okay. I think I'm older than I look. But anyway, just this morning, I received an email that's a scam email, and I received it at my prosecutor's email address. And it wanted to let me know that I have been confirmed to receive a grant of $3 million.
Oh.
Yeah. Aren't you?
Yeah.
You want to touch it? Yeah. And supposedly this is from some Saudi tycoon who wants to give all of his money to things around the globe. And they just need a little bit of information from me if I'll contact them back at this email address. Okay? I would imagine that's going to involve a name, an address, date of birth, social security number, just a few little details probably that they'll need from me. There you go. Okay? And this is probably one of the more common kind of schemes we're seeing at this point in time. And what they refer to this as is phishing. And they spell phishing with a PH. And it has to do with they are trying to gather personal information from people who will let down their guard, who will be influenced into giving away some personal information. Because with a little bit of personal information from you, they can open up a credit card account in your name. And then they can buy things with it. And then they return the things and they get cash. They can open up a bank account that they will use to run through some checks that are good and then write a lot that are bad. They can do a lot of things to drain your accounts if they have a little bit of your information. And that's the other part of what we see, is that if at first they succeed and they get some money from you, they'll be back because they'll think they can keep doing it. And sometimes they have. We have had a few cases here in the county. One of the most recent ones we had was a woman that they made contact with about back taxes that she said that they told her she owed. And so they actually showed up in person after she spoke with them on the phone and said, well, I don't really know if you're for real what you say you are. And they showed up on her doorstep and showed her identification, and she believed it, and so she wrote them a check. And after writing that first check, by golly, they found out she owed even more taxes, and so they came back again. And when they came back, they got more, and then they went ahead and they had the banking numbers on the checks that she had issued, and they drained her account. Okay, 40,000 some dollars. Okay. And so under the circumstances, you know, there are certain steps that we tell everybody that you need to take. And one is, if you're not sure who you're dealing with, to take steps, to ask questions, to make them confirm who they are. But you know what? Your suspicion shouldn't stop at that point. Because if you don't really know the person you're dealing with, then they may be a con artist. They may be a person that this is the criminal life they're engaged in, and they're into it all the way, to the point of having false identifications, and they'll make it sound good and make you believe that they are what they say they are, but that's not really what they are. And so it just, in this day and age, you have to carry a good dose of suspicion with you when the person you're dealing with is somebody you don't know. And if they are a legitimate person, they're not going to mind. They're not going to mind that you want confirmation again and again and again as to what's going on and what's taking place. So, in terms of dealing with phone, you know, my father-in-law, he's passed now, but he'd had a stroke, and we put an addition on our house, and he moved in with us, and my wife did a lot to try and help him after his strokes. He did not recover full use of one side of his body, so he still had a lot of physical limitations. And so one day I came home, and my wife was talking with her dad about a phone call that he received that day from the telephone company. And the telephone company had asked him to verify his Social Security number over the telephone. And he had. He had done it. And I walked into the middle of that conversation, and I'm like, oh my goodness, no, you didn't really, did you? And I said, you need to immediately then do a credit bureau check to see if they've started hitting your credit cards. Because that's what we see on a daily basis. We see that kind of thing happening. You get a social number, and they immediately start hitting the person's Social Security, use that Social Security number to hit their credit cards. And they start hitting their accounts. Sometimes it's just a little test charge to see if it's good, and then they hit it hard for as much as they can take. And so I was very concerned that that's what had happened. And so we went through all those steps, and everything was okay. And come to find out the next day, it actually had been a fraud prevention worker from the telephone company that had called him. And I want to bring that story up to share with you that sometimes you are legitimately going to be asked for some of your personal information. But you know what? You shouldn't just give because they say they're working with the telephone company. They say they're working with the utility office. They say that, you know, they've got a lottery check waiting on you if they can just get this information from you. At first, distrust. Ask for verification. Get a name, get a business address, so that you have information to work with that they are providing to you. Don't give out that information just willy-nilly, just trusting. Because in my experience, and I'm sure Jay can speak to this as well, more often than not, you shouldn't trust. Not anymore. Okay, there are too many people out there that are asking for that information for bad purposes as opposed to good purposes. Understand that as a case unfolds, the filing of the charges is the beginning of a lengthy process. So here's how one of these cases would unfold. There'll be an occurrence where money is taken from you, and if it happens tomorrow, let's say, it's going to be something in a time frame from a month to a year after the money is taken from you before the investigation is concluded to the point where charges are filed. So a lot of time right there, okay? Then once the charges are filed, at that filing, we may not have the person there, okay? We may have to issue a warrant for that person. And so once we issue a warrant for a person, it depends on how long it takes for that person to be arrested and picked up and brought here to Clinton County. Because when they're picked up, they may be picked up in California or Florida, or then again, they might be right here in our backyard. You just never know, okay? Once we have the person here, they go to an initial hearing. At that initial hearing, the judge will explain the charges that we filed against them for theft or for fraud or forgery, depending on the nature of the things that they did to take money from you. We'd file criminal charges that express the provisions of the law that they violated. At that initial hearing, the judge explains what those charges are, and the judge will give them a number of dates for their case. And the trial date for their case could be 4 to 6 months after that hearing, and that's just the first trial setting. We try to resolve cases in that time frame, but to actually get a case to trial in Clinton County right now is taking 8 to 12 months to trial. We're still resolving the majority of them in that 6-month time frame, but to get it to trial is taking longer. And there are some cases that take up to 2 years to get the case to trial. But there still is just this basic problem that once a case starts, the defendant is able to delay it as many times as the judge will approve. And there are some legitimate things the cases can be continued for, because a lawyer who's appointed to represent someone accused of a crime has a duty and an obligation to raise that person's rights. And they want to gather information, and they want to prepare a defense so that they're ready when they actually get to the point of a trial to present a case to try and help that person out. And so under the circumstances, that can take some time. So I'm explaining all of that to you because one of the key things that I see on a daily basis with somebody who's been a victim of a crime is the frustration that you feel at how long this is taking to unfold. Okay, so that's part of the bad news. Let me give you the worst news. The worst news is that once that person is convicted, whether they pled guilty in that first 6 months or we finally got them to trial after 8 months to 2 years and they were found guilty, you are still out your money. And you are still wanting to be paid back what the person took from you. Part of what we will try to get for you in the resolution of a criminal case is restitution. Restitution is paying you back just the money you lost, your direct losses. That's what I can get upon a conviction of a criminal defendant. Now, I want you to think about this picture, okay? You think right now, how many times have you had somebody who owed you money? How hard was it to get money back from that person? A person you knew. They may have been a friend. They may have been a family member. They may have been a business associate. But somebody who was above board. The person that we just convicted of a crime, they're not so above board. They're not your friend. They're not your family member. Not usually. Not your buddy. Not usually. Okay? And we just put a felony conviction on them that makes it really hard for them to get employment. How long do you think it takes to get money back from that person? Long time, if ever. Okay? So, the moral of the story, all of that lengthy discussion, is an old saying that I think everybody has heard it before. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Okay? Don't be taken advantage of in the first instance because you don't want to be there. You don't want to be that victim. You don't want to have to go through all of that frustration and nuisance and hassle because it's not fun. It won't be fun for you. It won't be fun for any of us. It is what we do on a daily basis. And we will do the best we can to get back what you're owed. But it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard. Because someone, once they've been convicted of a crime, even if they have any assets out there, they're busy trying to hide them and make it difficult to find what value they have left to get to the money that's owed to you. And if they took advantage of you, chances are they've taken advantage of a lot of other people as well. You're not the only one. You're in line with a bunch of other people that they owe money to. And so under the circumstances, the kinds of scams that we see, we sometimes have restitution plans that just drag on and drag on and drag on. We have some people that are still repaying restitution after 5 years. They're still paying. So we drag them back into court. The judge chews them out. The judge tries to keep them on top of their responsibilities to pay what they are supposed to pay. But it's not like dealing with, if a storm came through and damaged your property, you submit a claim to your insurance, your homeowner's insurance or your renter's insurance, and they'd write you a check. It doesn't happen like that. Not when you're dealing with criminal cases. Totally different kind of environment to be in. So under the circumstances, it's what you need to be aware of.